mindful of the fact that whatever we do and say, you will know. Bless this meeting now in Christ's name. Amen.
All right, thank you, Representative Williams. All right, the first thing we've got on the agenda is our 10-year plan by GDOT. I'll ask, is Josh Waller, is he here? Josh, not here. All right, we'll come back to that. Josh is supposed to be on the way. We did hear a presentation on the 10-year plan from the commissioner and from Josh several weeks ago, giving you the opportunity to ask any questions or concerns of the commissioner that you may have. So I want to wait till Josh gets here so that we can, if there are any questions, we can address them with him. Okay, at this time, we're going to call SB 89. That's Senator Schaefer's bill. I talked with Senator Schaefer. He's was not able to be here, but I've asked Mark from the association if he would, who's very intimately familiar with the bill, to come up. This bill was presented by Senator Schaefer in subcommittee. So bills that were presented in subcommittee we will not take public testimony on, but we will hear from the author of the bill or representative of the author, and then we'll have committee conversation around that. So SB 89, if you would, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Mark Middleton. I'm here on behalf of the Georgia Railroad Association. The idea for this bill really started in 2015 when the Department of Education published their quadrennial rail plan. In that document, they had identified tremendous needs within the freight rail community, both in terms of long-term and short-term projects. And when Senator Schaefer learned of those needs, we started talking about the possibility of putting together the Georgia Freight Rail program. Basically, what this bill would do would be to create a program within GDOT that monies could be appropriated toward to accomplish some of the types of projects that are found on that list. Those projects would have to have a public benefit. Those projects would include, were projects all over the state, both in terms of geography and different types of projects. And so the bill is set forward, and the plan that's set forward in Senate Bill 89 involves three types of plans within GDOT. There's a rail enhancement plan, a rail preservation plan, and then a rail industrial access fund. All of the decisions would be within the discretion of GDOT, and they would promulgate regulations and rules that would govern how the program's ultimately administered. There are no highway funds or no other types of dedicated funds to this program. It would be a decision of the legislature to fund it subsequently. Mr. Chairman, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. And just for the record, we are working off LC 391714S. This was a committee substitute to Senate Bill 89. This bill actually passed out of the Senate last session. Senator Schaefer passed the bill last session. There were some concerns around the gratuity clause in the Constitution and whether or not the bill we had before us was constitutional. I don't think our whip is here, but Whip Coomer, I know, worked on this along with others over the summer and has brought forward with Chairman Harold the substitute that you have in front of you that addresses those gratuity clause concerns. Also, I know the industry and Senator Schaefer is comfortable with the substitute you have before you. So appreciate their work over the summer on this bill to make sure we perfected it. Is there any conversation, discussion among the committee members? Okay, number one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, will this administration or this program, federal funds, i.e. from the BRACE Act, if that's approved by Congress, would that be controlled up under there for short rail improvement?
Representative, I don't believe those funds would be included in this program. Those are funds that are already administered through the department, but would not necessarily be part of this program, to my best of my knowledge.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we have the report from the subcommittee was recommend due pass on substitute to Senate Bill 89. With that, we open up for any motions. Motion and second, due pass. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of due pass, Senate Bill Substitute 89, say aye. Any opposed? All right, we have the bill, and we'll just need to let Senator Schaefer know to go to rules. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is Senate Bill 324. This is by Senator Albers, and I know he has asked that Chairman Beach, who's very familiar with this legislation, present that on his behalf, and we've agreed to that. So, Chairman Beach, if you would, and you've got a couple more bills in our committee, so just get comfortable, and we will go through those.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Before I start, I want to tell you, Mr. Chairman, you did a great job in rules today. That was very entertaining, you and Chairman Mullis. Senator Albers had a death in the family, and he had to fly to Florida. So he will ask me to do this. This is a very simple bill. If you look at lines 13 to 15, it just allows a county and a municipality where their corporate limits abut each other to enter into an agreement to build a bridge. There's been some, I guess this is something he told me, Roswell ran into an issue when they were building a bridge, and it went into Cherokee County, and this just buttons that up. I've checked with GDOT, they're fine with it, and it passed out of transportation unanimously. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we also had this before our subcommittee, and it was recommended to pass from subcommittee. Do we have any questions of committee members of Chairman Beach? All right, hearing none, it'd be appropriate time for a motion. Motion do pass. We have a second. Motion and second do pass. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Chairman, do you know who's going to be carrying that for Senator Albers?
You know, I didn't ask him. I apologize. I'll text him. I think he's in the air right now. He's flying.
Just get that to either Abby or Zanita.
I'll get it to you. I should ask him. I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, and we send our condolences to Senator Albers and the family. All right, next on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 391. That should be before you, LC 391789. This is Senator Beach. Chairman Beach, go ahead.
Yes, this is a bill from CERTA, the State Road and Tollway Authority. What's happened is CERTA has assumed the responsibility for the express service. So they are now running the express service. All this does is it takes the language that was found in the Greta Code and it puts it in the CERTA code so they can get the same benefits that Greta was getting when they ran the express. So the three things it really does, it allows them to paying to register their buses. They don't have to do that. They preparing of log books, and then there's certain Department of Public Safety inspections, and DPS does not object to this request from CERTA. And I would tell you, DPS and CERTA are working on a variety of safety and inspection issues. So it's a very simple bill. It's a bill that they just want to be able to take care of the same thing at CERTA as they did at Greta. So it's all it's doing. And I do have Heather here with. Yes, she's with CERTA. If we have any questions of the administration, Chris Tomlinson was unable to make it. But I would open it up for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this went before subcommittee with a recommendation of do pass. Do we have any questions of Chairman Beach on the department bill, CERTA's department bill? All right, Chairman Taylor.
The perfect time to make a motion.
All right. We have a question at 25, Chairman Nimmer.
Thank you, Chairman Tammer. Chairman Beach, I just want to commend you on this fine piece of legislation on Senate Bill 391. It's a wonderful bill, and I think it'll help move Georgia forward in a lot of areas. And I look forward to working with you over in the Senate on some other measures.
Okay. Well, good. Since you like it so much, if it passes, I'll let you carry it if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Further, I'd be happy to carry it for you, Chairman Beach, if I can get a little bill out of your side over there.
I'm working with you on that. You know that.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to add that Chairman Nimmer, we're gonna miss you. We really are. I probably shouldn't have said that. I'm gonna lose control of the meeting. Yeah, I know. All right. Any other questions of Chairman Beach? All right. If not, I believe we have a motion. Chairman Taylor, do pass.
Pass, sir.
All right. And we have a second. Do pass. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And is Chairman Nimmer carrying this bill?
Would you carry this for me? It's a very simple bill, and you said it's a great bill. I'd appreciate it.
Good.
And we are gonna work on your other stuff.
That'll teach you to
Okay.
open the mouth. We also, I forgot to mention, but on SB 89, Representative Casey Carpenter will be carrying that on behalf of Senator Schaefer. So appreciate that. Be his first bill, I believe. Correct. All right. All right. Next, we're going to go ahead and while Senator Chairman Beach is there, we'll go ahead and let you do SR 537. SR 537.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this is, and I would like, Bailey, would you hand out the handouts? This is a bill to close Mitchell Street on a permanent basis. As you know, Mayor Bottoms has closed it during session, and what this does is closes it permanently. In 2005, Homeland Security recommended 39 safety changes that should be implemented on and around Capitol Square. We've implemented 36 of the 39. You see the turnstiles you have to go through and so on. Those were all part of recommendations from Homeland Security to make our Capitol safer. The final 3 recommendations are on Mitchell Street, and this addresses those, and we will be 39 for 39 if we implement this. You know, a few weeks back, I don't know if y'all remember, there was a man waving a gun, and they ended up at the cross guard, and then they ended up arresting him. Also, back in March of 2017, there was an act of terror at the British Parliament. 4 people killed, 50 people injured, and it was the same kind of situation right there with the road right next to Parliament. So, as you see in your handout, if you'll take your handouts, I want to go through. This has been talked about since 1953. And if you look, he's bringing you the handouts right now. Give him, oh, you got it? Yeah. And if you look at, Mr. Chairman, on the first page, it talks in November 1953, administration bills were introduced in both the House and Senate to designate the area around Capitol as Capitol Square and give the state absolute control over the area, including the streets. It was projected that Capitol Square, the portion of Mitchell Street directly alongside the Capitol, would be closed to traffic. Obviously, the highway planners and city officials were not pleased with the plan. Many legislators liked the idea, but others advised waiting until the expressway was finished. It's hard to believe there was no expressway there, but in 1953 there wasn't. And so it passed, and they just never closed it. So they've been talking about this since 1953, and then in 2008, the building authority, the Georgia Building Authority, and the DOT entered into a memorandum of understanding to close Mitchell Street, and again, it did not happen. So if you would look on your second sheet, shows you a conceptual drawing of the, which one's the second one? Is it the one with the, that one? Yeah, this one right here shows you what it will look like. There'll be a pedestrian walkway, there'll be landscaping, there'll be a guardhouse there, there'll be ballards, so you will have traffic for emergency vehicles, the governor to park, and people that park right there where the governor parks. So there'll be the ballards that'll go up and down, and so there will be traffic, but not, it'll just be for those that need to be in there. The second conceptual drawing is this one right here. And what this is, if you're coming off of the expressway, right now you would go down MLK and take a left onto Washington and go around the Capitol. You will now be able to take a left right when you get off and go around Liberty Plaza, and it'll come and take you right into basically the parking deck, and you'll be able to take a left and then get over to Memorial if you need to. It'll reduce a lot of congestion around the Capitol. The other thing I don't have a conceptual drawing of, Mr. Chairman, is GDOT and the Building Authority are working on, there's 5 parking spaces on Washington from Trinity to Memorial that are there. They're going to get rid of those parking spaces and have a double left lane to get onto Memorial so people won't use Trinity. They'll be incentivized to use Memorial to take a left. So those are the improvement that are going to be the enhancements. I will tell you, Mr. Chairman, this project is already under contract, And Mr. Stansel tells me they will begin construction April 1st. As soon as we leave, they're going to start construction on this project. And then the final handout I gave you was just a letter from Mayor Keisha Bottoms closing it on a temporary basis. I know the governor's office and the mayor's office has been working on closing this street permanently. So, you know, that's ongoing because it is a city street. But we want to have this in place. So this is why we're doing this. Look, it's a little bit of an inconvenience. I will tell you it's been nice to be able to walk across the street and not worry about getting run over in the last few weeks. And it is a little bit inconvenience coming in the mornings, but I think when we make these traffic improvements around Liberty Plaza and around those, make a double left on Washington right after Trinity, I think that will improve traffic flow and people will get used to it and it'll flow better. And I think safety's our number one concern. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Beach, will you go over again, right here, right in
Yes.
front of me, the exit from the freeway
Correct.
down Martin Luther King and entrance into the parking garage? Would you review that again?
Yeah. If you, you're coming off the interstate, right now you go straight, okay? Instead, you'll be able to take a left turn right there on Liberty Plaza, and above Liberty Plaza, and it'll come out to that street right there, which is that Capitol Avenue, and you'll be able to take a left turn on Capitol, go over to Memorial, take a right, and then go into the parking deck, and that's how you'd get to the parking deck.
Wait a minute, you said go over to Memorial and take a right, so you'd come off on Memorial and turn right and go into the parking deck?
Like we do now, off
Like-
Trinity, right?
Like
you know?
those that come off of?
Right.
Okay.
And I believe you might even be able to go into the parking deck right there. I think there's an entrance to the parking deck.
There's an
that
entrance
way.
right
So-
off of Capitol, that's
So
the
you'd
one
be
I
able to
use.
shoot right into Capitol Avenue off this new road right into the parking deck.
Okay, because the big problem now, even before Mitchell Street,
Yes.
coming down Capitol, coming off of Interstate 75, 85 South, getting off and getting on Capitol, it just starts to back up right at the old stadium.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Chairman Hitchens.
Yes, back in 2003, 2004, I was the Homeland Security Director, and that was one of our initiatives, and I never thought it would ever come to pass. I left in 2005, went over to the Department of Public Safety, and I don't know how many people know, but typically, when the parking garage was over there, we would have 2 or 3 people a year struck going from the old parking area over to the Capitol. And, the other part of it is the threshold for suspicious packages or explosive devices is 1,000 feet. And they, the national standard is to evacuate people for over 1,000 feet. And certainly with everybody on Mitchell Street and all the vehicles that come in there, there's easy access. If somebody was to bring an explosive device, and I don't know that this helps it, but back when I was Commissioner of Public Safety, we had an incident in Colorado. Certainly I wasn't out there, but there was a gentleman that busted through security and got all the way through the Capitol, and he was shot and killed going into the governor's office with a gun. So I think this is, I never ever dreamed it would happen. It's been going on for so long. I'd actually forgotten about it, and I hadn't talked to Mr. Stansel in a while about it, but I appreciate you bringing this.
Well, to your point, when you think about Mitchell Street right there, you've got the judicial, you've got the Attorney General, you've got the LOB, and then you've got the Capitol and the Executive Branch right there. So that you bring up a good point.
And Josh can probably speak to it. Back in 2005, I think we had a suspicious package over there, and the governor didn't really want to evacuate the Capitol, but he finally did, and because it's 1,000 feet, and we haven't had any suspicious packages in a while. But and I don't mean to bring it back up, but certainly, I was about 35 feet from the bomb in Centennial Park when it went off, and there's a significant. I mean, the ability to build a bomb now is so easy that. And you see what just happened across the country with the bomber. So thank you very much. I just appreciate it. It's
All right. Thank you.
Representative Carson.
Chairman Beach, thank you for bringing this bill. I had a question on a different part of the schematic. I'm looking on the left-hand side of this piece of paper.
Yes?
the left-hand side of the paper, in regard to the Capitol. It
Okay.
looks like is that a new roundabout going in at, would that be Memorial and Capitol? Or maybe I'm just reading too much into that, but it looks like the cars are going around.
I don't know what that is, to be honest with you. I'm not sure.
I mean, we're not talking about that specific area. I'm just asking in regard to this
No, I
schematic.
don't think that,
Streetcar?
no, I don't.
Representative Williams, Representative Williams said that's an artist doodling.
I can find out. I'm sorry, I
fine.
don't know the answer to that.
All right, thank you. All right,
One last thing, Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
could
go
have, is one of the questions that came up in subcommittee was how to handle folks with disabilities. And we received a letter from Mike Galifiankis from the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission, and he said that will be addressed. There will be a place for the disabled to be dropped off and so on in this plan. So I wanted to share that with you.
all right, Representative Prince, do you have a question?
Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't, but I can, I
It-
did have
Your,
one.
your light's on, but it's been a
Oh,
while.
well, yeah, it's probably been a while, and it didn't work down here. But I'm glad to. I got a letter from, a copy of the letter from the mayor
Correct.
closing it temporarily.
Correct.
Has the city agreed to this
Well,
permanent closing?
I want to be very clear, they have not, but the governor's chief of staff and Mayor Bottoms are talking every day about this to get this done. I think when we pass this resolution, this urging resolution, I think it will help support the governor's case to close this and to do what Homeland Security suggested back in 2005.
And
And when
yes,
she sees all the improvements, she's been abreast of all the improvements that are going to be made around with the new double left turn lanes on Washington and the new road right there on Liberty Plaza.
and I can definitely see how this would secure Mitchell Street. However, the other side, going to the Twin Towers, and I
Yeah.
think it's Martin Luther King. Is there a plan to sort of close that down also? Because as you talked about terrorist bombs
Yeah.
and packages and things like that, they could be dropped off possibly anywhere. And the last point, those individuals that our safety guards, for lack of better words,
Yes.
policemen that help us across the street every day and all that stuff. As far as employment for them, I guess they're not needed, won't be needed any longer, or do we have? What goes that? What happens there?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they were specifically hired for that or if they just did that. I think they are part of the Capitol Police Force. They do other things also. So I'm sure they didn't lose their job.
Let's hope not.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things I want to make sure we're clear on too for the committee, I know there was a comment made as an urgent resolution, but this actually it has the force of law. So if this passes, it closes the street. I just want to make sure that's clear. All right. Next, I think Representative Garner, number 10.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That certainly answers one of my questions, although I'm a little confused. You mentioned that it's a City of Atlanta street. It is not a state road,
It is not a state road.
and we can, by resolution,
To-
make a
Chairman-
determination about
Chairman
what
Tanner
happens.
is correct. If this passes, we can close the road. We'll have to do some kind of condemnation from the city and take the road.
The state will condemn the road.
They will do that, and that will be the process.
If you all would look just for a minute at the picture with the Capitol and the lovely roundabout, I mean, it's a wonderful plan. We would like the Capitol to have all these beautiful amenities, frankly. But if you look at the top of the page, by the time you leave the current building where the court is, as you go across the street, you come to Atlanta City Hall. If you continue on, you come to the Fulton County Courthouse and the Fulton County Administration Building, which is a major employment center. So closing during the legislative session makes really good sense to me, and there are some ways to add some temporary amenities to make it more attractive. Is it true that there are actually two projects, one that has been let that does not include Mitchell Street, and a separate project that includes Mitchell Street. When I asked GDOT, they didn't seem to know anything about it, so I'm confused about who has the authority for the project.
The Steve Stansel's group is the one that has signed the contract for this road around Liberty Plaza.
And did it include the closing of Mitchell Street?
Yes, well, if this passes, then they would also have the funds to close Mitchell Street, build the guard shack, build the pedestrian walkway, do the landscaping, put the ballards in, and do everything that needs to be to close it permanently.
And so they would be condemning a city street.
Unless the governor's office and Mayor Bottoms can work this out, which I think they're getting closer, from what I understand.
Well, I'm glad to know that they're discussing it.
Yes.
Yes. On this, the Mitchell Street drawing, I note that the date is November 28th, 2008. Has there been an update of this plan?
Okay, come on up, if you would. She's with Mr. Stansel's office. Come on up, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Have a seat there and speak into the microphone if
Hi,
you would.
I am Christy Sanders with the Georgia Building Authority and State Properties Commission. Yeah, just a point of clarification. The pedestrian bridge that connects the Twin Towers to the parking deck area, that bridge will be coming down whether or not you approve this legislation. That's already in the works. And the road to connect MLK Street over to Capitol Avenue, that will happen whether or not this project happens. It's been talked about a lot in connection with this because it will help to alleviate the traffic issues. Now, as far as the Mitchell Streetscape project, we have not contracted for that work yet. So all of the designs that you see are sort of just conceptual of like what we could do. But it didn't make sense to spend a lot of money having someone design the streetscape until we knew that it was going to actually be closed. And as the senator said, that we have been in talks with the city of Atlanta. That's a little bit above my pay grade, but we are very hopeful, and it seems very promising that we will come to an agreement with the city of Atlanta and will not have to file any sort of condemnation action.
So I notice you have a bridge over whatever that street is to
the new parking deck, yes. I'm not sure if that is in the works right now. We are, right now it's, the contract that we signed is a design build contract, so the firm is designing things. We know for sure that the bridge is coming down and a road is coming in. And the design for sort of other things like that is still in flux. Like we're trying to see what we can afford.
And have you considered a bridge over Mitchell Street or a tunnel underneath?
Tunnel underneath would be very cost prohibitive, and with closing, because you would have to close, and it's also sort of a problem of you would have to close the street. The tunnel is pretty cost prohibitive. If it's one of those things, if you do it when you're constructing the building, it's easier, but
of course.
We
Yes.
have talked about a bridge.
Who knew we were going to have all this, right?
I know, right?
Well, as you might imagine, I represent the city of Atlanta. We can only wonder what else might be condemned that is in the city of Atlanta. We, are growing and trying to develop our tax base to help the entire state. So, as I understood the negotiations, the street was to be closed until April 1st, and that there would be further negotiation. And for us to pass a resolution at this time, I heard Senator Beach say it was an urging resolution. I heard my chairman say very clearly.
No, he's right. It's a resolution, but it's got the full weight of the state behind it.
I have read lines 32 through 34 very many times.
Okay.
And it seems to me that you leave the city of Atlanta without a remedy at all. And Mr. Chairman,
Which lines?
32 to 34. if you wouldn't mind, I would like to have, the city of Atlanta was not at the subcommittee meeting when this was presented, and we didn't have the access to the letter from the mayor or the drawings. And nor was there anybody from the city of Atlanta there. So I know it's unusual for a full committee, but if you wouldn't mind, I would really like to hear from someone from the city of Atlanta.
Yeah, we'll honor that request. I do have one more question here. Let me get to that, and then we'll ask someone from the city of Atlanta to come up and speak. All right, Chairman Taylor.
Yeah, we'll be brief, sir. Vehicle-borne weapons, whether it's containing explosives or not, are becoming the, I guess, the weapon du jour of choice, because you can, a 3,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 pound truck can be just as deadly as anything else, to pedestrians in particular. Having been in Beirut in '83, that was, the maximum side of it, but you look at New York, you look at Nice, France, you look at a lot of the other things, just hardening the site, I think, is important, and that's not a question, that's a statement. The question I have is coordination with Atlanta on emergency vehicles and things like that. Is that, I guess that would be down the line on how they respond to this.
Exactly. There would be coordination. There would be somebody at the guard shack.
For Atlanta
the
Fire,
Ballards, the Ballards
the
could come
Ballards,
down, and they'd be able to get through there quickly.
And I guess one more, Mr. Chairman. So this is basically, that we're not adopting this particular plan at this time. We're just authorizing it to proceed from this point forward. Is that correct, sir?
Correct, but I will tell you, the intent is to make sure we have pedestrian access, we have landscaping, and we have the Ballards with the access for the emergency vehicles, the governor's parking spots, and whoever else parks right there by the side of the Capitol.
So I will say, just in this environment, hardening the site, I mean, I'm all for it. I think, the tunneling idea, it's great, but we're, it's cost prohibitive. There are ways to do this. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, we've got some we want to hear from the city, so thank you. All right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And you're welcome to stay there. We can have them come up to the
Okay.
podium in
Yeah, I'll
case there's
just
any
stay
other
here.
questions.
Thanks.
Is there any
Stay
other
here, stay here.
questions of the, from the committee
mind.
at this time? We will entertain the conversation or from the city of Atlanta if someone's here, and I believe Ms. Howard's here, correct? If you would come up to the podium, and I'll turn that on. And Ms. Middleton.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Megan Middleton, Intergovernmental Affairs Manager for the City of Atlanta. I work in Mayor Bottom's office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for letting me address the full committee today. As you all have been presented, we do have a copy of the letter from the mayor agreeing to shut down the street temporarily through April 1st. And I have seen the drawings in this circumstance, and although just to make clear that, and the senator did say this too, I appreciate it, that closing of Mitchell Street, these plans are not contingent upon that. These plans are, like he said, going forward as far as the other streets around the state buildings. Those will go forward regardless of Mitchell Street and its position right now. And it is a city street. We would like to continue looking at this and studying this possibly after the construction of the new streets and the new entryways and exits, after that has been done, and then we can do an up-to-date study on how those new streets would be affected by the closing of Mitchell Street, and how that would affect, how other traffic would be affected, how other areas would be affected. So if we could get to, possibly having, after the state has done their construction, and then we can do a new updated study as to how this could go forward if it is deemed to go forward. We do have, an emergency preparedness officer. I'm not sure that she is aware of the latest Homeland Security report and how that would affect any other areas in the city, not only the Capitol, which I know the state has the authority for. But we're not sure about the costs, how that would be covered if the street were to be closed, who's going to cover the costs of that, as the senator has said it would be condemned. What about the other streets around the area that are controlled by the city? Who's going to pay for the restriping, signage, things like that? So we do have some concerns. We look forward to partnering with the city as we move forward, but we are still in talks at this point, and we don't want to get ahead of those, I don't think, and would like to possibly wait on the moving forward with this.
Any questions from Ms. Middleton or of Ms. Middleton? All right. Thank you very much. So
Thank you.
one of the things I'd encourage you to do is to have the mayor's office reach out to the governor's office also on this issue, if they haven't already talked with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 15. Yes, Chairman Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize if I missed the discussion on lines 23 through 26. Indicates that quite some time ago, a measure was passed that designated control of the streets around there to the state. Did we have testimony or discussion on the accuracy of that, and what does full control mean? Is there a necessity for a condemnation action if indeed the statute has already taken place? And I appreciate the willingness of everyone to cooperate together, and we should continue to do so, but just kind of a little more clarity on that portion of the resolution.
Yes, it's one of those, the title history we've checked, and it's not exactly clear, but we've looked at the title history, and it's pretty clear that the city of Atlanta owns this street, and that the fact that they have maintained the street for the last 100 years basically indicates that they own it. The legislation, the 1953 legislation that's referred to, was really defining the Capitol Hill area, and so that you could have Capitol Police with jurisdiction over that area. We don't necessarily own the street, but it is part of the Capitol Hill complex that GBA helps to maintain, so it's sort of more in relation to other things. So it doesn't make us the owner of the street, and it sort of creates some confusion.
Representative Garner. Did you match yours?
Well, yes,
Go ahead.
I think we need to be good community partners. I understand that the governor and the mayor have been meeting, and I'm assuming GDOT has some role in all of this as part of the plan. So I just would make a plea to you, Senator Beach, that you consider allowing the process to go forward in a collaborative way and see whether we can get this piece of this lovely puzzle that you've created to bring the community partners together in a friendly way as opposed to a condemnation action.
All right. We, no other questions. We will entertain any action that this committee wishes to proceed with. Number 5.
Yes, sir. And understanding Representative Gardner's thing, I think one, this does not mandate this. It's just this is authorizing us to proceed with the planning and everything. 2, I think the collaboration is. I think it's authorizing to proceed. We're not adopting this exactly. This is from my understanding, sir, right?
If this passes, we're going to close Mitchell Street. Now, it
And
may.
I
it
agree
may
with that,
look a
but
little-
it may not look exactly like this.
It may look a little different, but
I
it's
agree.
going to have
Okay, so-
pedestrian
so-
access. It's going to have landscaping, the tree,
Okay, yeah.
I don't know how many trees,
So-
but it'll be well done.
But I would say the collaboration is the
Yes.
important part, and I think that cooperation benefits everybody, and with that, sir, I will make a move to pass.
All right, we have a motion to pass to Senate bill before us, Senate Bill 537. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to pass. Now for discussion, I believe Representative Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. What is the effect on the plan for our overall security, the Mitchell Street closing, other improvements that are contemplated if we don't pass this resolution?
Well, I mean, Homeland Security and the Colonel can tell you that in 2005, they recommended 39 changes.
Right.
Or improvements, enhancements, if you will. We live in a very different world than we lived in years ago. I mean, it's a very dangerous world. And we've implemented 36 of the 39. These are the last 3 things. If we implement this plan, as we've showed you, then we will be 39 for 39, and we have done everything that Homeland Security had recommended for us to do to make sure it's a safe Capitol Square.
Follow up on that, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
ahead.
Yes, sir.
Right, I certainly appreciate that. I mean,
Yes.
that's important, but just looking at the plan, and again, I know it's not in stone, but the street that is going to be cut across the bottom of Liberty Square is happening. We've heard.
That's under contract. As she said, it's a design build, and it will start April 1st.
Right, but that's happening. So it looks to me like if we don't pass the resolution and Mitchell Street isn't closed, that we're really creating almost an intersecting area there that becomes dysfunctional a little bit. So we're almost sort of wasting our money by doing what's in place to be done now if we don't close Mitchell Street. I mean, would you agree with that?
I would not disagree with that.
Okay.
That's why I would urge you to vote yes and close it.
So I don't mean, we're sort of going down the road.
Right.
All right, Chairman Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask if I could, is there anybody on the committee that opposes the underlying substance of closing Mitchell Street? Okay. I mean, I'm not blind to the distinction about, and what are the terms on which we work with the city. The term condemnation's not lost on me. But I just, that we as a state can't execute this contract and move this forward without this resolution. And if no one opposed the underlying policy of closing Mitchell Street, I would just, I don't see how there can, I mean, there may be further discussions to have in terms of process, but I just, to the gentleman's point, I would urge support for this.
All right, Representative Prince.
Let me make sure I understand. What you say is 36 out of 39 that we've completed as far as this?
Correct.
Okay. And since 2005, so close, about 13 years or so.
Correct.
So closing, better coordination with the local government, holding out for a few more weeks of, I'm not sure how long these talks take to get this thing that, would that, do you see that as
Well, I can tell you, it was
holdup?
important to Mayor Bottoms to have it closed during session for our safety.
Right.
And I think if we're gonna close it during session, it makes sense to close it the rest of the year also.
Okay.
All right. Representative Garner.
Yeah.
To close it, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, nor am I in favor of it. I believe we need additional discussion, and to close it for 12 months when we are here for 3 months seems to me something we ought to think long and hard about. Those of us who live and drive around the city for the other 9 months are going to face some significant difficulties, and as you know, we already have some congestion issues. So, I just find it interesting that we can't think of a way to make it work collaboratively.
Representative, I would say this, that we may only be here 3 months, but the judicial branch, the attorney general, the executive branch, the employees are here 12 months a year, and their safety is as important.
As is the safety of the people who work at the City of Atlanta,
Right.
and the City of Atlanta Jail, and the Fulton
Right.
County Courthouse, and Grady Hospital, and on and on and on. This is a government section
Right.
that needs to be safe for all of us, even those of us who live here 12 months.
All right, we have one more question, then we're gonna call the question and vote. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My big question or concern is, while I don't oppose the closing, I am very interested before voting in hearing what the City of Atlanta has to say. And I'm also I'm a little concerned about negotiations, and we voting, it seems, why continue the negotiations if we condemn the street? End of negotiations. I just think that in good faith, if we're going to vote this, let's cut off the negotiations because it becomes nothing. I just, it's already done. I don't see why we're involved in negotiations. I think the cart's a little in front of the horse. In particular, do we have the authority to do it? Yes, we do. But I just think that I've always heard this home rule, which does not mean much anymore in the legislature. But I do think we start to enter an area. I hate the word condemnation,
Right.
especially when you're having negotiations. And I'm wondering, we can get an awful lot done. We've proven it so many times. We really don't, we do a lot in 4 days.
Yeah.
So are we so pushed till we can't express to the mayor where we are, and we can bring some answers to the table, maybe negotiate it out by Monday or Tuesday, and move on this? We just will postpone the negotiations if we vote this.
All right, we're going to call the question, and I'm going to ask that as we vote that you raise your hand and keep it up till Abby gives us her count. All those in favor of the motion do pass for Senate Resolution 537. Raise your hand. All right, all those opposed? All right, we have 8 noes, 7 yeas, so the motion is what? All right. It passes 8-7, so moves on the rules. My sidekick did tell me wrong, though, I will say
Thank
that.
you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Thank you, committee member.
I'll throw her under the bus. Chairman Setzler, you got a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to just, to the members, I wanted to explain myself if I could, Mr. Chairman. I was sensitive to the lady's question. I don't want to, the idea of dividing the question of it being closed during the legislature and being designed in a way where it could be a functional street throughout the year but closed during the legislative session with a guard shack, that option had not been proposed to me. And I am sensitive. I just want to tell the lady to us imposing on it. I'm sorry?
Well, he voted against it. Chairman Setzler voted against it.
I voted nay on that.
He voted his conscience, so he couldn't do any more. So.
Because I'll tell you, Mr. Chairman, I think I am very concerned about this legislature imposing on localities a legislative solution for which you could divide the question and let locals have some prerogatives, whether it's 3 months out of the year. So I appreciate the lady's point. I had not heard that before the committee meeting, so I wanted to apologize. Perhaps the discussion might have taken a different perspective, but I appreciate your question.
All right, thank you. Next, we are going to call Josh Waller. Josh, if you would, just come on up to the table. We're going to ask Josh to do 2 things for us. Number one, Chairman Gooch was not able to be here. He talked to me. This bill you have before you, Senate Bill 445, LC 391877 ERS, is the GDOT department bill. So we're going to ask Josh to present that, but Chairman Beach, while you're there at the podium, can you tell us who's going to be carrying the?
That's what I was coming back in. Matt Hatchett.
Matt Hatchett. All right, thank you. All right, Josh, we have the department bill, Senate Bill 445 before us. This is Senator Gooch. If you would, go ahead and proceed. If you could walk us through that, we'd appreciate it.
I'll do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 1, again, this is the department's annual statutory cleanup bill. Lines 14 and 15 and what you're looking at, basically just updating the statute with respect to requirements on contractors to go out and do inspections before they bid. Ensures that they're fully aware of what they're looking at, the scope of the project before they put their bid together. And so the current reference in statutes to federal aid, and in the advent of HB 170, Transportation Funding Act, we have state aid projects now that are capital. And so it's just basically a cleanup to ensure that it also applies to state-funded projects. Section 2, lines 48 and 50 are just basically updating to say it also satisfies the advertisement requirement that when we are letting projects that we can post those on the website for contractors who often rely on the website to figure out what's available to bid upon. Section 3, lines 54 and 55 are the additions, and it just makes clear that with respect to the E-Verify documentation, that they still have to provide it, but they're able to provide it prior to the award of the project as opposed to at the time of bid. The reason being is most of our bid documents are submitted electronically. This document still at this time is a hard copy, and we're actually having issues with it arriving in time. And so we have perfectly qualified bidders that are getting disqualified on a technicality simply because that document didn't hit our mailbox at the time of the bid. So this would just ensure that before it's awarded, that we have that document. Section 4 deals with some cleanup dealing with our right-of-ways. This was brought to us at the request of public safety, wanting to ensure there's consistency between state and local law enforcement about unauthorized access to right-of-ways and ensuring that folks are not engaged in illegal activity. And so this just makes that clarity. And it's something that State Patrol thought was, and Department of Public Safety thought was critical for coordination between state and local governments. Section 5 is building upon some legislation that was passed 2 sessions ago dealing with surplusing of right-of-way. That's right-of-way that was acquired, and then as the project was completed, that's sections that are no longer needed once the project was complete. And it had made some common sense changes, allowing for the disposal of it of the property, selling it if it's with up to less than 15% of the appraised value. The reason being is as long as the highest bidder is within 15% of what we appraise it to be, we could still sell it. That provision, however, was not applied to all the different disposal methods. So this just makes it consistent throughout the different types of disposal, whether it's sealed bid, whether it's first offer of prior owner, successor, and title having that first right of refusal, whether it is auctioneer. It just makes it consistent across the board, just cleans up that section. Doesn't make a lot of any other changes really beyond that, just clean up. And those are lines 85 to 86, 98 to 101, 117 to 120. And then it just clarifies 92 to 95 about a real estate broker being Georgia-based to do the appraisal. So I'd like to say pretty straightforward, but certainly if there are any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Waller. Representative Garner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So the bridge that collapsed was in my legislative district where there was a fire. I noticed you added making of a fire in there. What proposals do you have for the implementation of the people who are living under the bridges and camping all along in the city overpasses?
It's that's not something for which I think we have the capability to render a decision on what other options are available. Again, I would underscore this was when it comes to unauthorized access to our right-of-way, that's not just a Department of Transportation issue. It is always with coordination with public safety and local law enforcement. And this was language that was endorsed by them to bring clarity as to how to resolve issues that we know we're seeking resolution today. The greater issue of other options for individuals that might be looking to take refuge in right-of-way, unfortunately, that's just not in the scope of the departments.
So it would be up to the local officials
Again,
to
yes.
enforce this law?
I think, correct. So, yeah, the department has no law enforcement capabilities.
Right.
But law enforcement, state law enforcement, public safety felt it was additional clarity in the statute would be helpful in their coordination with local law enforcement.
Chairman Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to offer, I'm contemplating a friendly amendment to the department on the lines 66 through 67 dealing with camping. As it currently reads, it shall be lawful for any person to use any portion of the road or highway or any property owned by the department for camping. When I look at the criminal trespass statute, there's a knowingly and without authority element in there that's required. This is a criminal offense we're putting in place. And if someone were, because we're not, we're in our minds we're thinking about camping gear that's on the underpasses here on I-75, but what we're putting in place is any property owned by the department for camping. So any DOT property, it could be rights of way that's acres that may be adjoining interstate. It could be other property. I'm not gonna imagine other property far from a roadway, but it could be a significant amount of property. I just think there's a concern from a standpoint of making it a per se crime without a knowledge element. It's not consistent with even our criminal trespass statutes.
So certainly, we actually would stand by the language in the underlying section, because there are actually exception provisions dealing with other intentional locations because they're actually state-owned property that DOT has that we work in coordination with DNR or rest areas. It makes exemptions for those.
No, I see that and I appreciate that. So if you're in a place that's acceptable for, and it's designated for purposes of resting, sleeping, eating, or other similar activities, I get that, and that makes perfect sense in subsection C. What we're saying is that somebody who believes they're on their cousin's property that happens to be on DOT right-of-way is, by virtue of being there, committing a crime. There is no knowing element in that. And that's just not consistent with Title 16, how we handle criminal statutes. I don't understand why we would not have knowingly there. And I'm not trying to gut this bill. I'm not trying to make it impossible to enforce, but there is it's just not how things are customarily done, Mr. Chairman.
Let me just make sure I understand too, Chairman Sessler and the committee, basically an example of what you're saying would be if somebody's camping on my property, which is on the side of a state highway, and they think they're on my property with permission, but they're actually over on the right-of-way, that overzealous law enforcement officer would not be able to prosecute them for that. We're not really talking about the obvious situations where somebody's sleeping under an overpass here in Atlanta, but a lot of our county areas out in the country is more what you're referring to.
And Mr. Chairman, when we think about right-of-way in our mind's eye, it's the center line of the road, and maybe 100 feet on either side or whatever, but the fact is we own parcels of land, there may be 10, 15 acre parcels of land that are not linear in nature, that sort of abut off the side, and that's, we're saying if you are simply present there, your presence represents a crime, and we need to have a knowingly. No, criminal trespass has knowingly and without authority. But I can't imagine us doing this without a knowingly element, not to make it harder than it should be.
At the appropriate time, if you want to make that motion, we'll do that. All right, Representative Williams.
Just a quick question for clarification, Josh. I was listening and we talk about camping under bridges and what happened to the bridge on 85. Help my memory. If I remember correctly, tents and some clothing would never get hot enough. It was DOT's storage. They burnt that bridge down in it. That's the only thing that got hot enough to bend that steel. So wasn't it the stuff y'all had stored under there? It wasn't the folks sleeping under there. I mean, clothes just don't get up to 2,000 degrees. Am I right?
You are correct that clothes do not get up unless they're in a fire that's 2,000 degrees. But I would acknowledge that, you are correct that clothes don't. It was
because of the storage that DOT had left under there.
the fire.
If it wasn't
I guess
DOT, who was it? But it was something that was stored under the bridge that burnt that bridge down.
Yeah, I believe there's been a criminal investigation. I can't speak to what occurred. I wouldn't want to speak to what was occurring, but I believe there were individuals that were involved in starting a fire that would have initiated the fire that burnt the bridge.
Mm-hmm. I was just talking about the fuel.
Understood, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So
Okay.
The department did not start the fire.
Oh, no. I wouldn't dare say that, but the department's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the department's equipment that shouldn't have been stored under there was what fueled the fire to the temperature that burnt down the bridge.
There is, and I can't speak to the final investigation of the fire marshal, but there was no pending violation of policy for the storage of that material.
Okay.
There was fencing around the location, so the individuals had to gain access to a secured location to take habitation there to do so.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. All right. Representative Carpenter.
So I guess my concern is that if we do exactly what Chairman Setzler says, we would have to post signs at each bridge to say no habitation or no camping so that they would know. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Chairman Sessler.
Mr. Chairman, either we'd post signs, or the practical effect would be, there'd likely be a warning circumstance. If they're under a bridge and it's obviously right of way, and you can say, you recognize this is state right of way, you can't do this. So the cases of people being under a bridge, I think we're covered. I think if someone were out on a piece of wooded property that belongs to GDOT, I do think you'd have a duty for an officer to say, get out of here, you don't belong here. They come back second time. I think you could prosecute them for that.
Is there a way to make, because I'm not a lawyer, but is there a way to word this so that you leave the middle of the interstate and under bridges away from your addition, but then add that to other areas? Is that a possibility so that you're able to conquer the main intent, I think, of it and still cover what you guys are concerned with?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that if you've got a person that's let's say it's a homeless individual that's sleeping under a bridge, they've got their sleeping bag right under the bridge piece. I think if a police officer walks up and says, you realize this is an interstate highway, this is state controlled property, they know that. There's a conversation that goes on. You know, hypothetically, and these things don't go to court very often, but if they were to, if he asserted his rights, prosecution would say, you recognize that's an interstate highway, do you not? You recognize the state-owned property. You know that you sort of walk through that circumstance. I think you could, again, hypothetically, if we're in a court circumstance, I think you get the conviction. If you're not, I do think you'd have to demonstrate they knew that it was state-owned property and DOT right-of-way, and I don't think you'd get one there because the person didn't know. And I think as a matter of policy, if someone doesn't know and they're making an honest mistake, I'm not sure we really want to, without a warning, want to make them subject to a misdemeanor. I mean, as a matter of policy, I think that works itself out in a way that comports with our common sense if you follow kind of those circumstances.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Waller.
I would just add, I think we've worked with public safety and with council on the drafting of this version, and certainly understand the context of the discussion that y'all are having. I'd say the department's posture would be to strongly encourage support of the underlying language, and if the issue of overzealous enforcement were to really manifest, we would be more than willing to work on amendments in the future. But I think the language as it is today is already produced out of a compromise, so we'd certainly endorse it and encourage the committee's support for it.
Let's see what our distinguished retired colonel of GSP has to say. Colonel Hitchens, Chairman Hitchens.
Well, I worked 43 years in state government, the overwhelming majority in the Department of Public Safety, and ever since 1954, there's a federal rule prohibiting any pedestrians or any slow-moving vehicles on the interstate highways, which I presume is what we're talking about here mostly. I have never, ever heard of anybody being arrested. Typically, they encourage them to leave. They load them up in the car and take them to the next exit ramp. And the only time I would know that or would think that anybody would be arrested is if they resisted leaving. They stop people all the time for hitchhiking, people riding bicycles, tractors. I mean, and the intent is just to get them off the highway so that there's no public safety issue.
All right, here's the posture we're in. We're going to ask for a motion. If that motion's do pass, then if we have a motion and a second, then we'll take any amendments. So do we have a motion do pass? Motion, do we have a second? Second. Motion and second do pass of SB 445 as you have it in front of you. Do we have any amendments? Any amendments? Chairman Setzler.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not looking to make an emotional appeal here. I just think we're trying to do good homework, and I agree with the representative, former Colonel Hitchens' point. I don't think there's any overreach by public safety officials. I'm just trying to write good law here, and we just knowingly would be a part of this if we're going to make this a misdemeanor. That's all. If we track criminal trespass as knowingly without authority, I don't think the without authority thing applies because it's obviously posted state property. That doesn't apply. But the knowingly element's just something I think if we're doing our homework, we should include. I don't think it's gonna cause harm. I just do think, I think in the spirit of doing our homework, and I say that with a great deference to my constituent I face here, who's a dear friend, so.
All right, so we have state your motion for us, Chairman Sessler.
I would like to, on line 66, between the word "to" and "use," it shall be unlawful for any person to knowingly use any portion of the road, just inserting knowingly between "to" and "use."
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment to insert on line 66 between "to" and "use" the word knowingly. So one word change. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All right, are there any other amendments? All right, hearing none, we're going to vote on the amendment as presented by Chairman Sessler, the Sessler amendment. All those in favor of the Sessler amendment to add on line 66 between "to" and "use" the word knowingly will say aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it, so it is inserted. So now we're voting on the main bill as amended by this committee. So we're voting on Senate Bill 445 with the Sessler amendment in it as amended. All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? All right, the bill passes as amended, and do you know, if not, we'll get it from Senator Gooch, but do you know who's going to be carrying this?
Chairman Epps.
All right, our wonderful friend Chairman Epps will be carrying this for the House. All right, next we have the 10-year plan. The Commissioner and Mr. Waller was here several weeks ago. They provided us a great deal of information. If they had printed it all, we would have killed many, many trees, but they provided electronically for us. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review that. I know several members have asked questions of the Georgia Department of Transportation Administration. If you have any questions of GDOT, I know that Mr. Waller will be glad to answer them, but part of the process we have to go through is we do have to pass a 10-year plan as a body each year as part of House Bill 170. So are there any questions? All right, number 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a proposal to build, I think, 39 miles of truck lanes, and the price on that was over $2 billion. Can you give me some idea of why that cost, why it's so expensive to those 39 miles?
I am not in a position to speak to the cost estimate
Mhm.
on those managed commercial vehicle lanes that would run between Macon and Atlanta, but
Mhm.
certainly am glad I can follow up with additional information on what all is built into that cost. It's one of the components of the MMIP, which is in the latter years of that 10-year period. And so certainly I would probably be in my lane to say it's probably got some of the rougher estimates. So as we get closer into the concept and preliminary engineering phase, should have a better concept of the underlying cost. But it's, you want to think of the Northwest Corridor project, which added 2 reversible lanes up 75. That was about $1 billion. So I mean, it's in that ballpark of what we're looking at.
Hold on just a minute, Mr. Waller. We got a couple of representatives that's playing games here. We need to let them step out.
I'm trying to get it off. I think that's an endorsement. That's
Yeah.
an endorsement for distraction.
Now,
Yeah.
Now, were they knowingly playing games?
It looks like it. Go All right. That's Mr. Carson has indicated that that's the reason he's trying to pass a distracted driving law for Representative Carpenter. All right, go ahead, Mr. Waller. Sorry about that.
Again, so with time, we should have a better estimate on that. Again, it's in the latter years of the managed lane of the MMIP. But again, when you look at the Northwest Corridor project, which added fewer about maybe not half but 3/4, that's in the ballpark of $1 billion. So.
All right, thank you.
And so following up on that, so since this is not going to be done next year, we will going to have an opportunity to see this in the 10-year plan in future years. So there would be an opportunity for us to get additional information if we feel like that's important.
And the other, if I could,
Yes,
Mr.
go
Chairman,
ahead.
with some of the components of the MMIP is, a lot of those projects are not just funded with it's an issue of motor fuel. It's actually innovative delivery. So you could have, it's public-private partnership, so you might have financing costs. You have other opportunities for, other skin to be brought into the game. There's also federal funding too, federal loans like TIFIA, private activity bonds. And so all of those projects in the MMIP have a different profile and have a potential different profile when it comes to fund sources. So you may have costs that aren't related to the underlying construction, but the financing. Because a major part of being able to deliver that $10 billion, $11 billion program is not that we have those ready funds, but there are opportunities with public-private partnerships, federal assistance, federal programs, grant programs, loan programs, that will make them happen. Because motor fuel and the regular federal aid program are going to take care of existing roadways. We had to look to innovative delivery to be able to take that next step with additional lanes in the metropolitan area and providing freight connectivity throughout the state.
Representative Gardner.
Just one quick question. Was the closing of Mitchell Street in the 10-year plan?
This 10-year plan doesn't reflect any specific projects, so, but.
So you can't tell me what the cost is?
I do not know the cost associated with that.
You got to give her credit for trying. All right, no other questions on the board. This is all that's standing between us and going home. So we have a motion, I bet, from Chairman Taylor.
Move to pass, sir.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to pass to approve the 10-year plan. Is there any other discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.